You're weird. Okay. Good morning, and welcome back to another. Sorry, my wife is making me laugh in the background. She's enjoying this thoroughly. Welcome back to another. No having fun. All right. Thank you. All right, welcome back to another Read Aloud Hoot. Thank you very much. We are joined today with Diego, obviously, who's not finding this as funny as we are. A creepy clown, so keep an eye on that thing so it doesn't come after me. And I decided to drink out of my beauty cup today because, as you can tell, I'm having a really good hair day, and I feel very beautiful. Do you mind? Okay. Chapter 5. Serious. Roy zipped through his homework in an hour. When he came out of his room, he heard his mother talking to his father on the phone. She was saying that Trace Middle School decided not to take disciplinary action against Dana Matherson because of his injuries. Apparently, the school didn't want to provoke Dana's parents in case they were considering a lawsuit. When Mrs. Eberhardt began telling Mr. Eberhardt about the wild tussle between Dana and his mother, Roy slipped out the back door. He wheeled his bicycle from the garage and rode off. 20 minutes later, he arrived at Beatrice Loop's bus stop, and from there, he easily retraced Friday's ill-fated foot chase. When Roy got to the golf course, he locked his bike to the pipes of a water fountain and set off jogging down the same fairway where he'd gotten clobbered. It was late in the afternoon, steamy hot, and a few golfers were out. Nonetheless, Roy ran with his head down and one arm upraised for deflection in case another errant ball came flying in his direction. He slowed only when he reached the stand of the Australian pines in which the running boy had vanished into. The pine trees gave way to a tangled thicket of Brazilian peppers and dense ground scrub, which looked impenetrable. Roy scoured the fringes, looking for a trail or some human sign. He didn't have much time before it would get dark. Soon, he gave up trying to locate an entry point and elbowed his way to the pepper trees, which scraped his arms and poked his cheeks. He shut his eyes, and onward he thrashed. Gradually, the branches thinned and the ground beneath him began to slope. He lost his balance and went sliding down a ditch that ran like a tunnel through the thicket. There in the shadows, the air was cool and earthy. Roy spotted a series of charred rock circles, a layer of ashes inside, looking like there had been campfires here. He knelt by the small pit and studied the packed dirt around it. He counted half a dozen identical impressions, all made by the same set of bare feet. Roy placed his own shoe beside one of the prints and wasn't surprised to see that they were about the same size. On a whim, he called out, "Hello? Are you there?" No answer. Slowly, Roy worked his way along the ditch, hunting for more clues. Concealed beneath a mat of vines, he found 3 plastic garbage bags, each tied at the neck. Inside the first bag was common everyday trash: soda bottles, soup cans, potato chip wrappers, apple cores. The second bag held a stack of boys' clothing, neatly folded, t-shirts, blue jeans, and what have you. But no socks or shoes, Roy observed. Unlike the other bags, the third wasn't full at all. Roy loosened the knot and peeked, but he couldn't see what was inside. Whatever it was felt bulky. Without thinking, he turned the bag over and dumped the contents on the ground. A pile of thick brown ropes fell out. Then the ropes began to move. "Uh-oh," Roy said. "Snakes. And not just any old snakes. They had broad triangular heads, like the prairie rattlers back in Montana, but their bodies were muck-colored and ominously plump. Roy recognized the snakes as cottonmouth moccasins, highly poisonous. They carried no rattles to warn in advance of strike, but Roy saw that the tip of their stubby tails had been dipped in blue and silver sparkles, the kind used in art projects. It was a most peculiar touch. Roy struggled to remain motionless while the fat reptiles untangled themselves at his feet, tongues flicking. Some of the moccasins extended their full lengths, while the others coiled sluggishly. Roy counted 9 in all. This is not good, he thought. He almost leapt out of his sneakers when a voice out A voice spoke out from the thicket behind him. "Don't move," the voice commanded. I wasn't planning to," Roy said. "Honest." We have a little break there. Looks like we're going to get back into Roy's story. I'm wondering if that voice was the boy who was running. Let's read on and find out. When he lived in Montana, Roy once hiked up Pine Creek Trail into the Absaroka Range, which overlooks Paradise Valley and the Yellowstone River. It was a school field trip with 4 teachers and about 30 kids. Roy had purposely dropped to the rear of the line, and when the others weren't looking, he peeled away from the group. Abandoning the well-worn path, he angled back and forth up the side of a wooden ridge. His plan was to cross over the top and quietly sneak down ahead of the school hikers. He thought it would be funny if he trudged into the campsite and found him napping by the creek. Hurriedly, Roy made his way through the forest of towering lodge poles. The slope was littered with brittle, dead logs and broken branches, the debris of many cold winters. Roy stepped gingerly to avoid making noise, for he didn't want the other hikers down below to hear him climbing. As it turned out, Roy was too quiet. He walked into a clearing and found himself facing a large grizzly bear with 2 cubs. It was impossible to say who was more startled, him or the bear. Roy had always wanted to see a grizzly in the wild, but his buddies at school told him to dream on. Maybe in Yellowstone Park, they said, but not up here. Most grown-ups spent their whole lives out west without ever laying eyes on a big bear. Yet, there was Roy, and 100 feet across the glades were 3 serious bears, snorting, huffing, rising on their hind legs to scope him out. Roy remembered that his mother had packed a canister of pepper spray in his backpack, but he also remembered what he'd read about bear encounters. The animals had poor eyesight, and the best thing for a human to do was remain perfectly still and silent. So that's what Roy did. The sow bear squinted and growled and sniffed for a scent. Then she made a sharp coughing noise, with her cubs obediently dashing off into the woods. Roy swallowed hard, but he didn't move. The mother bear rose to her full height, bared her yellow teeth, and faked a lunge toward him. Inside, Roy was quaking with terror, but on the outside he remained calm and motionless. The bear studied him closely. Her changing expression suggested to Roy that she figured out he was too meek and puny to pose a threat. After a few tense moments, she dropped to all fours, and with a final defiant snort, lumbered off to collect her cubs. Still, Roy didn't move a muscle. He didn't know how far the bears had gone, or whether they might come back to stalking. For 2 hours and 22 minutes, Roy remained stationary as plaster statue on that mountainside, until one of his teachers found him and led him safely back to the group. So, Roy was extremely good at not moving, especially when he was scared. He was plenty scared now, with 9 venomous snakes crawling around his feet. "Take a deep breath," advised the voice behind him. "I'm trying," Roy said. "Okay, now step backwards real slow on the count of 3. "Oh, I don't think so." Excuse me. "Oh, I don't think so," said Roy. 1. "Now wait a second." 2. "Please," Roy begged. 3. "I can't." 3, a voice said again. Excuse me. Roy's legs felt like rubber as he teetered backwards. A hand seized his shirt and yanked him into a thicket of pepper trees. As Roy's butt landed in the dirt, a hood came down over his face and his arms were jerked behind his back. Bless me again. Before he could react, a rope was looped twice around his wrists and secured to the trunk of a tree. Roy could feel the smooth, sticky bark when he wiggled his feet and his fingers. "What's going on?" he demanded. "You tell me." The voice had moved in front of him. "Who are you? Why are you here?" "My name's Roy Everhart. I saw you run by the school bus the other day." "I don't know what you're talking about." "On 2 different days, actually," Roy said. "I saw you running, and I got curious. You looked kind of, I don't know, wired." "That wasn't me." "Yeah, it was." The snake wrangler was using a false husky tone, the voice of a boy trying to sound like a grown-up. Roy said, "Honest, I didn't come out here to hassle you. Take off this hood so we can see each other, okay?" He could hear the boys breathing. Then, "You're going to have to get out of here, like right now." "But what about the snakes?" "They're mine." "Yeah, but..." "They won't go far. I'll catch them again later." Roy said, "That's not what I meant." The boy laughed. "Don't worry. I'll take you out of the back. Just do as I say, and you won't get bit." "What a guy," muttered Roy. The boy united him from the Brazilian pepper and boosted him to his feet. I got to admit, you did pretty good, the boy said. Most kids would have peed their pants. Are those cottonmouths? Roy asked. Yep, the boy sounded pleased that Roy knew what kind of snakes they were. Where I used to live, we had lots of rattlers, Roy volunteered. He thought that if he could start a friendly conversation, the kid might change his mind and take the hood off of Roy's face. I never heard of a cottonmouth with sparkles on its tail. They're going to a party. Now start walking. The boy grabbed Roy from behind and guided him forward. He had a strong grip. I'll tell you when to duck for branches, he said. The hood was either black or dark blue, and Roy couldn't see a speck of light through the heavy fabric. Blindly he stumbled and swayed through the thicket, but the barefoot boy kept him from falling. Roy knew they were out of the trees when the air got warmer and the ground beneath his feet got flat. He could smell the fertilized sod of the golf course. Soon they stopped marching, and the kid began to loosen the knots on Roy's wrists. Don't turn around, he said. What's your name? Roy asked. I don't have a name. Not anymore, anyway. Sure you do. Everybody's got a name. The kid grunted. I've been called Mullet Fingers, and I've been called worse. You don't really live out here, do you? None of your business. What if I do? All by yourself? What about your family? Roy asked. The boy rapped him lightly on the back of the head. You ask too many questions. And you ask too many nosy questions at that. Oh, sorry. Roy noticed his hands were free, but he continued to hold them back behind his back. Don't turn around until you count to 50, the kid instructed him. Otherwise, you're going to wake up one morning with one of those big old cottonmouths in your bed. Got it? Roy nodded. Good. Now start counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, Roy said aloud. When he reached 50, he whipped off the hood and he wheeled around. But he was alone in the middle of the driving range, surrounded by acres of golf balls. Barefoot Boy was gone again. Roy ran all the way back to his bicycle and rode home as fast as he could. He wasn't frightened and he wasn't discouraged. He was more excited now than ever. Okay, and that takes us to the end of chapter 5. So we're finding out a little bit more about this boy. It seems as though he doesn't mind catching snakes, so he's probably brave. He's got nicely folded clothes, but no shoes. And he seems to be living out in the woods, maybe without family. So it's getting very interesting. I hope you're enjoying the story. We'll read again next time.